Good afternoon, gentlemen, to Elsie's River Radio. The show is Talking Men, and my name is Johan de Meyer from Pivot Point Life Coaching. And I'll have to check, but I think this is about our 6th or 7th episode, so woohoo! Celebration time. You can see today I have no guests, so it's you and me. Which also means this is an ideal time for you to get on that WhatsApp line, because what I'll be sharing is a little bit of my coaching journey, and obviously I'll have opinions, and the best show is the kind where opinions get challenged. Okay? The WhatsApp number, I'm sure you don't have a pen, so just check the Facebook page. Okay, so today I want to talk about something that you maybe are going to feel is very airy-fairy and waffly-waffly, because it took me years and years to figure out what this concept means. And you know how at the end of every show I say you don't need to know the answer to start working on the problem? It kind of slots in with that, because often, I hope you see I'm teasing you. Often the starting point for the solution is not where we think it is. So the waffly thing, self-love, and I'm sure a bunch of you are going, oh, self-love, what does that have to do with me? But I think the easiest way to describe things sometimes with something like bullying, that's an easy example. Why does one child deliberately belittle another one? And there can be many reasons, but one of the most often quoted reasons is low self-esteem means I need to prove that I'm worth something, so I need to belittle somebody else so that I look better. And between you and me, I think if you hear that, unfortunately that behavior is not limited to children. I saw a video on this morning from a psychologist, and she gave 5 pointers for how do you know you are emotionally intelligent and mature. And I, to my own shame, admit that I think I got 2 or 3 out of them right. And one of them was you have the ability to celebrate your own successes when you haven't made it yet, but your friend or even your best friend or somebody in your community really gets a massive breakthrough in their business, their organization, and you can celebrate with them while still waiting for your breakthrough and celebrate your own small breakthroughs. That's maturity. And as I said, dis daar op die horizon vir my nog. I need growth there, but that habit of self-hatred, I need to pull somebody else down so that in my own perspective I can appear legitimate, I have integrity, I'm good at my job, I'm strong, for men physically strong many times, but do you want to be that person? Do I want to be that person? So let's switch it on its head. If that is self-love, then it means instead of breaking somebody else down so my bad can look better, it is working on myself so that what I can bring to the table is according to my resources and my situation, and I don't need to compare it to somebody else to know, am I doing well or am I wasting my time? Because in essence, Self-love has nothing to do with other people. It has to do with me and how I see myself. And once I have that settled, yes, then we can talk about other people and their nonsense and all of that. But I don't, instead of breaking somebody else down to build me up, I can build myself up and become an instrument to pull the other person up as well. Because then truly I am the instrument that helps somebody else love himself even more, which means we build a community of support so I can reach even higher than I would without that person. So I'm trying to simplify this concept of self-love because, as I mentioned, I struggled with that really for 8 or 10 years. What does self-love mean? What does self-care mean? It felt wollerig. Julle weet mos, as jy nie aan iets kan vat nie. Dit is almal praat daaroor, maar niemand weet regtig hoe om dit te doen nie. Because it comes down to the doing, not to the thinking. We can understand self-love here, but when it comes to the day-to-day actions, how do I practice self-love out there? So the first question was, what is self-love? And I think, as I said, sometimes it helps to start from the negative side, self-hatred. So self-love is kind of the opposite of self-hatred. But what many men hear when they are told you need to love yourself is, no, you're being selfish. Your children need that time. Your wife needs that time. Your partner needs that time. Your job needs that time. You can't take 10 minutes out and just spend it on yourself. And I think that's pretty much a myth. How do you, and again, this is not my idea. I admit it, 100%. But I read this somewhere else. How do you want your children to talk to themselves during times of failure in 20 years' time? Because the way we talk to them now will sit in their memories, and in 20 years' time, that's how they're going to self-talk. That's how they are going to self-encourage. Okay? So they follow our examples much more closely than what we think. So if I say, I can't spend time on self-care because I must provide for material needs. I must be present at the mosque or at church. I have this list of stuff I need to do. That's exactly what our children will do in 20 years' time. This thing of breaking the cycle of poverty, for me, yes, it's an economic question, but I think to make it only an economic question is a complete misnomer, because a poverty mentality basically means I need somebody else to look after me. That's the short of it. I can't get out of this myself. So if I'm so focused on the activities of my life, of being a father that provides food on the table, the message that I'm projecting is that the food is more important than the attention. You see? Do you want your children to treat your grandchildren that way? If the answer is no, then something needs to change. Okay, so if the problem is there's stuff going on in the community, there's stuff going on in the family, I said in the beginning, we don't need to understand the problem to start working on the solution. And the solution, according to me, in this instance, is we need men and fathers that understand how to model self-importance. Not in a negative way, not in a selfish way, but in a way where I can communicate, where's my boundaries? What can you do with me and what can't you? You know, I have friends in this community, and I've seen people in this community, and they are just the rocks. If somebody needs something, they know I can go to Uncle so-and-so and he will help me. If I don't have a place to stay, Auntie so-and-so takes in the kids. And so, but there's no consequences to those actions, because those men, and I'm generalizing, I admit, but often those men feel by serving somebody else, by serving the community, by serving even my children, I get my worth from that. And then they don't realize why over time anger starts creeping in, and you start shouting at exactly the child that you're trying to help. I've been there. I've done that. I've taken kids in, and after 6 months they mess up and there's just a big explosion. Because before I can help other people, I need to know, what am I willing to sacrifice? What am I willing to give up so that I can help this person? And I need to clearly know when that person I'm trying to help is overstepping that boundary. It became very clear to me, wow, this is about in 2007 or 8. There was a youngster, my wife and I befriended him off the street. He spent long times living with us. We tried our best, but our best wasn't good enough, because in the end, a friend helped us to understand you need to know where your boundaries are. Are you trained in substance abuse? No. So then it takes the emotions out of the discussion. Can I help? No, I can't. So the best way to help is to refer, to send that child to a place that can help him. And if he runs away from that, to stop justifying his behavior because it reflects on me. Now, I'm not a good helper because the person I tried to help fell out of rehab. No, that's not your fault. That's not on you. It's not on me. That person wasn't ready for what we tried to give him. So that thing of boundaries, I think that's where self-love begins, to know what can I do, how can I help, and how can I not help. If I say yes to this thing at some organization, yes, I'll help with that, I immediately need to do the sums. Jy het nie wiskunde op skool nodig vir die ene nie. I need to do the sums, because if I say yes to that, I'm going to say no to this. If I say yes to this, maybe this activity is on my date night with my wife. I'm going to have to say no to my wife. And what will the repercussions of that be on my marriage and on my children? So self-love really is prioritizing yourself over everything else. Really. We are all very familiar with, in various faith traditions and in secular psychology, you can only give what you have to give. You can only love others as much as you love yourself. And for some reason we struggle with that. So in a way, I want to speak to you as a friend today and give you permission that you are allowed to be important. You are allowed to be more important than the friends you hang out with. You are allowed to make times. Remember, listen carefully what I'm saying. You are allowed to make times where you are more important than your wife and children. Where you take a piece of time, and this is my time. And it's not to listen to a sermon. It's not even to listen to music, unless it's maybe quiet, meditative music. It is time for me to sit and process the emotions that I felt yesterday or over the last week. Emotions don't go away by understanding them. Emotions go away by feeling them. If I'm angry at my wife, I need to make time and sit and admit I'm angry at my wife and feel that anger and allow it in. Feel it. And that's what our brain needs. You can go research that on AI for brain psychology. But your brain needs time to process an emotion. That is self-love. It means I'm giving myself the time to be the most important person in the equation. Because once that anger is processed, I'm going to respond in a completely different way. When the person I'm angry with, wife, children, boss, colleagues, when I'm standing in front of them again. Because daai kriewelrigheid wat hier in jou maag begin, where somebody says something and your fuse is blown sommer net daar op die spot. If we make time for ourselves to process those things, it makes those encounters easier. So self-love is being, in the positive sense, a little bit selfish by saying, this is my time, these are my boundaries. And yes, at another time we'll talk about how can I communicate these boundaries to the people around me, so that they know that they don't step over the boundary and I'm angry at them and they didn't even know they stepped over the boundary. That's another story for another day. But for now, this is self-love. It's to prioritize your own mental and physical well-being. Now I want to talk just a little bit about the how, because that's what I struggled with for 9 years. Okay, so I'm supposed to make time to be the best me I can be. But how? How do we do that? And I want to remember, I made you a promise. I will not tell you what to do, but I will give you a selection of tools that you can choose from. The most basic thing is, when you start tensing up, when you start stressing about anything, at work, at church, at family, anyway, often it happens for me while I'm driving. There's a very simple exercise. The reason why you start tensing up and getting anxious is because there's a trip switch in your brain. And I'm not going to explain the brain psychology. We'll maybe get an expert in and do that at some stage. But that's how the brain works. When I get anxious and I feel I'm not in control, oxygen is cut off to the part of my brain that solves problems, which means I react. I don't respond. That's where most of the klapper comes from in the streets of Elsie's, is because somebody doesn't step back and think what is happening here and what's the best response. They react immediately on the spot. Jy staan nie so met my praat nie, kwa! Okay, so an easy exercise to help with that, and as I said, for me, often I use it while I'm driving, is first the breathing box. And all it means is you breathe in on 4 counts, hold it for 5, and breathe out slowly through your mouth for 7 counts. That does 2 things for your brain. Number 1, the slow out breath communicates to your brain, I'm safe. I can switch off my defenses, I'm safe. You will have noticed if somebody has a panic attack in your family, the first thing they start doing is they breathe in so fast, in and out, that oxygen never has a chance to get to the brain. And the more they do it, the more anxious they get. So when you feel, even to the slightest bit, I mean, even if you work in a place where you weld, or you're an electrician or a plumber or a builder or whatever, lay those bricks. I lay the bricks on 4 counts so that I can breathe in. I hold my breath while I finish it off for 5 seconds, and I breathe out slowly for 7 seconds while I get the next brick. Incorporate it in your work, incorporate it in your driving. All that does, it does 2 things. It communicates to your brain, I'm safe, I don't need to fight. And it brings oxygen to the part of your brain that can help you make decisions. Okay? My wife taught me this. Never make decisions when you are angry, emotional, or in any other way distressed. First, calm down. Breathe. The good Lord made us with oxygen all around us. Breathe. The second thing you can do to break that cycle of anxiety and panic, and again, a few examples. I'm late at work. I'm not reaching my targets. I don't have enough money for food this month. The second thing you can do is, in those 10 minutes that you give yourself every day, is sit, be quiet. If thoughts come to your mind, picture them as little clouds. Just let them go. And all you do is you start noticing what is around you. For example, if I was doing that exercise now, I would notice there's a screen in front of me. There's a light here that is making me look better than what I really look. There's a banner behind me. There's words written at the top. There's a wall behind me. There's a table with, and not describe them. All that does it takes the attention of your brain off the thing that you are anxious about and redirects that energy and that oxygen to the problem-solving part of your brain. It calms you down so that you can think straight. Please remember what I've said about advice. When you are angry and frustrated, going to your friends for advice is not always a good idea, because they may be just as stressed as you. So never make decisions when you are angry, frustrated, or in an emotional state. And don't ask advice from people that are in that same state, because it won't help. What you need to do is come back to a place of self-love, of I love myself, I appreciate myself, I can make good decisions, I'm a good father, I'm a good husband, I just need to learn to show it. That makes sense? So these are just a few things. There's lots of other tools that one can use. So what is self-love? I'm just quickly covering ground that we've done already. Self-love is, in the positive sense, just being a little bit selfish and giving time to yourself and setting boundaries for how close people can come. There must be time where I am more important than every crisis around me. So the second question, why is it difficult for us? I don't know. You can decide that. But there's so many pressures that come from every side. It's very, very hard to build that boundary. That's where we talked about boundaries. It's very hard to build a boundary, and even for your wife or your partner or your children to say, listen, Daddy's not going to be available for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to sit in the car and lock the doors, and when I come out there, then I'm ready for you again. So you put yourself in a position where people can't just bother you, and they know the boundary is, don't knock on the window. It's making time for yourself. So it's hard to do that because it feels like you're saying no to your child. But actually, by saying yes to your child, yes to yourself, you're saying yes to your child. Then I gave a few practical examples. There's many more. As you watch the show going into the future, we'll give you many more tools. You'll remember that Franklin gave you that tool of in the morning before you do anything, put off the phone, put off the music, take 10 minutes, process the emotions from yesterday and make a decision. Who do I want to be today? Okay. So I want to move into the fourth and the last part of what I wanted to share with you today is what's the use? You know, I hear that from many young people and even older people, you know, what's the use? And people have latched onto this thing of the system. The system. Now, I agree, there is a system that we function in. There is an economic system, there's a social system. And yes, many of those systems need to shift and change. But this is where that daiseding, where that comes in. You don't need to know the solution of how to shift the system to start working on the problem. And the start, where we start working on the problem is here. It's that Michael Jackson song. I've considered making that our theme song maybe sometimes. I see all these problems in the world. If you go read his lyrics, I see all these problems in the world. But I'm starting with the man in the mirror. It begins with me. If I can break the cycle, the emotional cycles in my family, by being present to my children, because I recharged this morning, it gives them an example of, oh, if daddy makes time for self-love, I must do that too. And by the time they have children, it will be normalized in the family line. And that's my fourth point, is what's the benefit? The benefit is exactly that. You don't break the poverty line by putting more money into your family. It is very possible that you will end up with a house in a better neighborhood, your children in better schools, but children and a partner that don't know who you are because you don't know who you are. Does that make sense? So it's really important that we come to a place of understanding our worth and appreciating the small breakthroughs that we make. And I know some people will disagree with me, but instead of buying that better car, or if you have a big promotion at work, moving to a better house, take that little bit of extra money and save it and build memories with your family. You know, if it's something small, take the train to Greenpoint Park and just go play. That memory will mean so much more to your kids than, you know, another evening of KFC, because we get used to the KFC. But we never get used to playing frisbee with dad on Greenpoint Common. Okay? So it's a pity that in our city there's so few spaces close to our houses for low-income families where dads can do that with their kids. But, you know, find a way. Find board games in the house. Play soccer with them in the street. But the knock-on effect of I'm learning. Remember, this is never finished. I'm learning to love myself. I'm learning to see when I make small steps in the right direction. And I acknowledge those steps. You know, if every time I get a small thing right, I say, it's just a small thing. Over time, it breaks your confidence to make another small step. Instead, acknowledge, yes, it's a small step, but it's a step in the right direction, and it took effort to get there. And let's celebrate that. And if you tell your best friend, he may even laugh at you and say, man, het sy dan niks gedoen nie. Dis dan so 'n klein dingetjie. En sluk dit nou maar. But you know the amount of effort it took for that to happen. I recently posted something on the Elsie's River group, and I'll close with this, where a tattoo artist was in his shop, and somebody came in and they asked him, please type on my wrist 976. Not type, tattoo, sorry. You don't tattoo with typing machines. Please tattoo there, 976. And when he asked the lady, what was that for? She said, well, my daughter was addicted to heroin, but I know how hard she fought it. Time and again, she tried and she tried and she tried and she tried. She didn't in the end take an overdose because she stopped trying. She did her best. And she was sober for 972. That was the number of days that she was sober before she had an overdose. And yes, there were, difficult times during those days, but I knew who my daughter truly was during that time of those few days. And for me personally, that sparked an idea. I know all people don't like tattoos, but I feel like tattooing on my wrist +1, because I've been diagnosed with long COVID. And it's almost 5 years now that I don't have a full-time job. Now, gentlemen, I'm not trying to compare difficulties with difficulties. All I can say is, for me, to be practically in bed 24 hours a day and have your family become your nurses and watching them burn out because they must keep you alive. The effort it takes to wake up for one more day, to go clean yourself, to make the few calls that you can do, to work for 2 hours on the computer because that's your only capacity. The effort it takes for that +1 must be celebrated, because the alternative is giving up. And I want to leave you with that. If you can just take one day at a time and learn to love yourself again. As teenagers, I have a cupboard in my bedroom with the tallest mirrors in my house. And it's my two sons' favorite rooms, because they come in there to adore themselves. It's what teenagers do. But somewhere along the line, we lose that. When last, let me ask you this, when you were brushing your teeth, did you look in the mirror to see what you really look like? To see the plooitjies hier, and the hair is gray here, and I don't want to grow a beard because it's gray there. When last did you look at yourself in the mirror and just appreciate your own humanity? Because I lost that. As time went along, I brushed my teeth without looking. I comb my hair without looking at my face. And it's like you forget that you are a human being. You become a human thing or a human doing. You must just get these things done. When all that we need, bro, is start with those 5 or 10 minutes a day, that +1. If I can learn to love myself, just that one little pivoting step more today. In a week's time, I would have made 7 decisions. In a month's time, I would have made 30 decisions. And you know what? Your wife and your children will notice. They will notice the work that you are putting in to change. And it's not change to the outside. It's change in terms of your appreciation that I'm a human being. I have the gift of life, and that gift of life must be treasured. And if I treasure my gift of life, I have the capacity to treasure that gift in my partner and my kids, and eventually the community and all of that. But let's stick to the family for now. That's plenty work. But I really want to encourage you to remember that story. And just to tell you the kind of the tail end of that story is the man then tattooed that number for the woman, and he did it for free. And then over the next 3 to 6 months, it became a thing in the town where he lived, where people, even drug addicts, would come in and say, I've been sober for 10 days. I want you to tattoo there 10 days. Because if I can do 10, then I can do 11. If I can do 11, I can do 12. Because those people are maybe addicted to drugs, but we are addicted to work, to doing, to providing, instead of being present. So, whatever you need to do, go right on the mirror with your wife's lipstick, +1. If I can learn to love myself for one more day, that little bit of more that I have to give will benefit my children for generations to come. I'm signing off, Johan de Meyer, Inspire Elsie's Radio. And again I say, you don't need to know the solution for your family. But one of the points where you can start to solve the problem is with yourself and the way that you love yourself. God bless.